February 1945. Only a few months remain until final victory, but the war continues to take its terrible toll. On a road near the small East Prussian town of Melzach, an artillery shell explodes. A splinter finds its target, 39-year-old Army General Ivan Danilovich Chernyakhovsky. Thus tragically ends the life of the youngest front commander in the history of the Great Patriotic War. A man whose military career became a phenomenon of Soviet military art. In just 3.5 years, he rose from colonel to army general, from division commander to front leader. Behind him are the liberated Kursk and Kiev, Minsk and Vilnius, the breached defenses of East Prussia. What allowed a simple Ukrainian boy from a peasant family to reach such heights? What qualities did the commander possess who managed to be ahead of his time and earn the trust of the Stavka at a time when the cost of a mistake was measured in thousands of lives? In the Ukrainian village of Oksanino, Uman district, Kiev province, on the 29th of June 1906, a boy was born into the family of railway worker Daniil Chernyakhovsky. He was named Ivan. No one could have then imagined that this child from a simple peasant family would become one of the most brilliant commanders of the Great Patriotic War. Ivan Chernyakhovsky's childhood cannot be called cloudless. When he was 9 years old, his father died. A few years later, his mother also passed away. The boy was orphaned, and he had to learn the hardships of independent life early on. From the age of 14, Ivan began working as a shepherd, then worked at a railway station, helping to support his younger brothers and sisters. A difficult childhood hardened the character of the future commander. It was during these years that the traits that later distinguished him among other military leaders were formed: perseverance, purposefulness, the ability to make quick decisions, and to take responsibility. The year 1920 became pivotal for Ivan Chernyakhovsky. The Civil War reached the Ukrainian lands. The 14-year-old teenager saw real Red Army soldiers, their weapons and equipment for the first time. This made an indelible impression on him. When Red Army units were being formed in Novorossiysk, where Ivan had moved in search of work, he joined their ranks without hesitation. His first acquaintance with the army was short-lived. The teenager was sent to study. But the military path already attracted him. In 1924, Ivan entered the Odessa Infantry School, and a year later transferred to the Kiev Artillery School. Here, his outstanding abilities in exact sciences, his thirst for knowledge and amazing diligence were revealed. Classmates recalled that Chernyakhovsky stood out among the cadets not only for his academic diligence, but also for his leadership qualities. He often helped struggling comrades, knowing how to approach everyone. At the same time, Ivan always found time for reading: military memoirs, historical works, classical literature. This drive for self-education became another distinguishing feature of the future commander. Another important quality of Chernyakhovsky was also revealed in the artillery school: his interest in technology. He could spend hours disassembling and assembling weapons, studying the design of artillery systems. This knowledge and these skills later helped him become a brilliant specialist in armored forces. After graduating from the Kiev Artillery School in 1928, the young commander Ivan Chernyakhovsky was assigned to the 6th Corps Artillery Regiment of the Odessa Rifle Division. Starting his service as a platoon commander, he quickly rose to battery commander. Colleagues noted his extraordinary energy and desire for self-improvement. Ivan Danilovich did not just follow orders, he tried to understand the essence of each task, find the optimal solution, often suggesting unconventional approaches. The late 20s and early 30s became a period of active modernization of the Red Army. New equipment was entering service, tactics were changing, and mechanized formations were being created. Chernyakhovsky enthusiastically welcomed these changes. His passion for technology, which had manifested itself in his youth, now received a new development. He spent hours studying the design of cars, tractors, and later, tanks, which were just beginning to arrive in the troops. In 32, fate took a sharp turn in the young officer's career. The command, noticing his outstanding abilities and interest in mechanization, sent Chernyakhovsky to study at the Military Academy of Mechanization and Motorization of the Red Army in Moscow. This decision proved to be fateful. It was here that Ivan Danilovich found his true calling, becoming a specialist in tank forces. The academic years were filled with intense study. Chernyakhovsky immersed himself in studying the design of combat vehicles, the tactics of their use, and the organization of repair and maintenance. He was not limited to the curriculum. He visited factories, met with designers, and studied foreign experience. This knowledge later became invaluable when he had to command tank formations in real combat conditions. Especially important for Chernyakhovsky's development as a military leader was the mastery of the principles of deep operation, a new concept developed by Soviet military theorists Tryandafilov and Tukhachevsky. This theory envisioned breaking through enemy defenses to their full depth using tank wedges and the subsequent introduction of mobile formations. Ivan Danilovich did not just study these ideas, he creatively reinterpreted them, offering his own solutions. His studies at the academy concluded with honors in 36. Chernyakhovsky was appointed commander of a tank battalion in the Kiev military district. Here, his talent as a commander and organizer fully unfolded. The battalion under his leadership quickly became one of the best in the district. Ivan Danilovich paid special attention to the technical training of personnel. He believed that every tanker should thoroughly know their vehicle and be able to eliminate malfunctions in the field. Chernyakhovsky introduced a training methodology for crews that today would be called situational modeling. Tankers practiced actions not only in standard situations, but also in various unexpected complications. Equipment failure, difficult weather conditions, loss of communication with command. This approach subsequently saved many lives in real battles. Chernyakhovsky's rapid career growth continued. In 38, he was already a tank regiment commander, and in 39, deputy commander of a mechanized brigade. Each new position required broadening his horizons and mastering new skills. Ivan Danilovich did not rest on his laurels, constantly learning, following the development of military thought, and analyzing the experience of local conflicts of that time. The war in Spain, the Soviet-Finnish campaign. By the beginning of 40, Chernyakhovsky received the rank of colonel and an appointment as commander of the 2nd Tank Division. At 33, he became one of the youngest commanders of a formation of such a level. Under his leadership, the division quickly transformed into a well-coordinated combat organism. The colonel personally checked the readiness of each unit, knew many officers by sight, and delved into all aspects of life in the formation entrusted to him. In 1940, the international situation grew more tense with each passing month. War in Europe was already raging, and many in the Soviet Union understood that a clash with fascist Germany was inevitable. During this critical period, Colonel Ivan Chernyakhovsky received a new appointment, commander of the 28th Tank Division, which was part of the Baltic Special Military District. The division was located in the area of the Lithuanian city of Kovno, modern Kaunas. The situation was complex. After the annexation of the Baltic states to the USSR, it was necessary not only to establish combat training, but also to build relations with the local population. Chernyakhovsky approached these tasks with his characteristic energy and systematic approach. First, the new commander personally inspected every unit. What he saw could not satisfy him. Insufficient technical training of crews, weak interaction between branches of service, and problems with material resources. Ivan Danilovich understood that in the event of war, such a division would quickly lose its combat effectiveness. Chernyakhovsky developed his own system of combat training, which in many ways was ahead of its time. Instead of formal adherence to regulations and demonstrative exercises, he emphasized practical skills in conditions as close as possible to combat. Tank crews learned to operate not only during the day but also at night, in difficult weather conditions and on rugged terrain. The commander paid special attention to technical training. A tanker must know his machine like the back of his hand, Chernyakhovsky liked to repeat. By his order, special courses were organized in the division where crews studied the material part down to the smallest detail. Mechanic drivers mastered repair skills in the field, and vehicle commanders learned tactics for various situations. A groundbreaking approach was Chernyakhovsky's introduction of complex exercises. Unlike traditional practice, where different branches of service trained separately, he insisted on joint training for tankers, infantrymen, artillerymen, and sappers. This allowed for interaction to be honed to automatism, which subsequently saved many lives in real battles. Chernyakhovsky was not a desk commander. He personally participated in exercises, getting behind the controls of a tank, setting an example for his subordinates. Officers recalled how the division commander could unexpectedly appear at the training ground at 4 in the morning to check the unit's readiness for night operations. An important element of training was studying the experience of combat operations in Spain, at Khalkhin Gol, and in the Soviet-Finnish War. Chernyakhovsky carefully analyzed the mistakes and successes of tank units, drawing conclusions about the most effective tactics. He understood that the future war would be fundamentally different from previous conflicts and prepared his division for these new conditions. By June 1941, the 28th Tank Division under Chernyakhovsky's command became one of the best in the district. The division also received high praise from the district commander, Colonel General Kuznetsov, during the spring exercises. But the most important test was yet to come. In the early morning of June 22, 1941, Chernyakhovsky was alerted. The war had begun. Thanks to his foresight, the division met the first strike in a state of heightened combat readiness. Unlike many other formations, Chernyakhovsky's tank crews were able to engage in battle in an organized manner, inflicting significant losses on the enemy. In the first days of the war, Ivan Danilovich's qualities as a commander fully manifested themselves. Coolness, the ability to quickly assess the situation and make unconventional decisions. Even amidst a general retreat, he managed to maintain control of the division, avoid encirclement, and withdraw most of the equipment and personnel. June 22, 1941, forever divided the lives of millions of Soviet people into before and after. For Colonel Ivan Chernyakhovsky, this day marked the beginning of the most severe trial in his military career. Precisely at 4 o'clock in the morning, the command post of the 28th Tank Division received a report of massive bombardments of Soviet cities and the crossing of the state border by German troops. Chernyakhovsky did not lose his composure. Thanks to his foresight, part of the division's personnel was on heightened alert. The day before, having noticed unusual activity on the opposite bank of the Neman River, he had intensified reconnaissance and ordered commanders to be vigilant. This decision saved many lives and equipment in the first hours of the war. The situation of the 28th Tank Division was extremely difficult. The enemy attacked with superior forces, supported by aviation. German tank columns rapidly advanced deep into Soviet territory. Under these circumstances, Chernyakhovsky made the only correct decision: not to throw equipment into scattered counterattacks, but to organize a systematic retreat, preserving the combat effectiveness of the formation. Unlike many commanders who lost control of their units in the first days of the war, Chernyakhovsky managed to establish clear interaction between subdivisions. He personally led rearguard battles, holding back the advancing enemy. Skillful use of terrain, sudden counterattacks on the flanks of advancing columns, competent organization of anti-tank defense. All these tactical methods allowed Chernyakhovsky's division to inflict significant losses on the enemy. Chernyakhovsky's military talent was particularly evident in the battles near Šiauliai. When German tank units tried to encircle the division, Ivan Danilovich organized an unexpected counterattack on the enemy's flank. This maneuver not only allowed them to avoid encirclement, but also gained time for the evacuation of repair bases and ammunition depots. In the most difficult conditions of retreat, Chernyakhovsky did not lose his presence of mind and infected his subordinates with his confidence. Officers recalled how the division commander personally led tanks stuck in a swamp out of harm's way, helped the wounded, and found words of support for demoralized soldiers. His personal example of courage and resilience inspired the tank crews to continue the fight, even in the most hopeless situations. By early July 1941, Chernyakhovsky's division, fighting continuous battles, withdrew to the line of the western Dvina River. Here, having received reinforcements and ammunition, the tank crews took up defensive positions. Ivan Danilovich brilliantly organized a system of anti-tank strongholds, skillfully using the features of the terrain. When German units attempted to cross the river, they were met by organized artillery fire, and tanks dug into the ground up to their turrets. An important element of Chernyakhovsky's tactics was night counterattacks by small groups of tanks. They delivered unexpected blows to the enemy's positions, causing panic and disorganization in their ranks. This technique, subsequently adopted by many Soviet commanders, allowed them to compensate for the lack of equipment and ammunition. By the end of July, Chernyakhovsky's division was incorporated into the Northwestern Front and was tasked with covering the direction to Novgorod. Despite heavy losses, the formation maintained its combat effectiveness and continued to perform combat missions. For skillful leadership in these battles, Ivan Danilovich was awarded the Order of the Red Banner, his first combat award. In August 1941, Chernyakhovsky received a new appointment, commander of the 64th Tank Brigade. This formation was formed from the remnants of several tank divisions and required an experienced leader. Ivan Danilovich, with his characteristic energy, set about organizing combat training and creating a cohesive team from disparate units. In July 1942, Ivan Chernyakhovsky's military career took a decisive turn. For his demonstrated skill in troop command and personal courage, he was promoted to Major General and appointed commander of the 18th Tank Corps. This was a significant promotion, from commanding a brigade to leading a large formation. At 36 years old, Chernyakhovsky became one of the youngest generals in the Red Army. The 18th Tank Corps was undergoing refitting after heavy fighting. The new commander had to transform disparate units into a unified combat organism in the shortest possible time. Chernyakhovsky, with his characteristic energy, set to work. He personally inspected every unit, spoke with officers, and delved into all the details of combat training. The general paid particular attention to the technical condition of the tanks. He told the mechanics, an effective system for repairing and maintaining equipment was established in the Corps. Thanks to this, dozens of damaged vehicles were quickly returned to service. The Voronezh-Kostornoy operation in January 1943 became Chernyakhovsky's baptism of fire as a Corps commander. The 18th Tank Corps operated as part of the Voronezh Front. The task was difficult. to break through the deeply echeloned enemy defenses in winter conditions. Chernyakhovsky proposed an unconventional solution. Instead of a frontal attack, he developed a plan for a flanking maneuver through forest areas considered impassable for tanks. The command approved this bold plan. At night, without artillery preparation, Chernyakhovsky's tankers passed through forest roads and suddenly attacked the enemy from the flank and rear. The result exceeded all expectations. German units, not expecting an attack from this direction, were disorganized. Chernyakhovsky's corps rapidly advanced, cutting off enemy divisions' retreat routes. In 5 days of the offensive, the tankers liberated over 100 settlements, captured thousands of prisoners, and a large amount of military equipment. The general personally directed the corps' actions, being in the forward units. Officers recalled how Chernyakhovsky went on reconnaissance in a tank and came under fire. The vehicle was hit, but the corps commander not only did not lose his composure, but managed to organize the repulsion of an enemy counterattack, using only 2 nearby tanks and a platoon of submachine gunners. Success in the Voronezh-Kostromnoye operation did not go unnoticed by the High Command. In April 1943, Chernyakhovsky received a new appointment, commander of the 60th Army of the Voronezh Front. At the same time, he was promoted to lieutenant general. Thus, at 36 years old, Ivan Danilovich became an army commander, a rarest case in military history. Taking command of the 60th Army, Chernyakhovsky understood the scale of responsibility. Now, not only tank units, but also rifle, artillery, and engineering units. Tens of thousands of soldiers and commanders were under his command. It was necessary to master a new level of troop command, to learn to think in operational strategic categories. Ivan Danilovich immersed himself in work. He visited all divisions, met with commanders, and studied the strengths and weaknesses of the formations. He paid special attention to staff service, because the success of future operations depended on the clarity of command. Chernyakhovsky demanded from staff officers not a formal execution of instructions, but a creative approach to solving combat tasks. In the summer of 1943, the Hitlerite command developed Operation Citadel, the goal of which was to defeat Soviet troops on the Kursk salient. The 60th Army, under the command of Lieutenant General Ivan Chernyakhovsky, held positions on the northern face of the Kursk Bulge, covering the most important direction towards Kursk. It was here, in confrontation with the elite armored divisions of the Wehrmacht, that the young army commander was to pass an exam in strategic thinking. Chernyakhovsky understood. The enemy would throw their best forces into the breakthrough, including the newest Tiger and Panther tanks. Preparations for the defense began long before the German offensive. Ivan Danilovich personally toured all sections of the future battle, studying every hill, every hollow. He spent hours poring over maps, analyzing possible directions of enemy strikes. The defense must be active. Chernyakhovsky constantly instilled this idea in his subordinates. Instead of a continuous line of fortifications, he created a deeply echeloned system of strong points and anti-tank areas. Special attention was paid to anti-tank artillery, the main means of combating German tanks. An innovation proposed by Chernyakhovsky was the creation of mobile anti-tank reserves. These groups, which included artillery, tanks, and motorized infantry, could be quickly redeployed to threatened areas. This approach allowed for the conservation of forces and flexible response to changes in the situation. On July 5, 1943, German troops launched an offensive. The main blow on the 60th Army's sector was delivered by the Wehrmacht's 9th Panzer Division, reinforced with heavy tanks. The enemy counted on a quick breakthrough of the Soviet defenses and an advance to Kursk. However, disappointment awaited the Germans. They were met by organized artillery fire, minefields, and well-fortified strongpoints. Chernyakhovsky skillfully maneuvered reserves, redeploying anti-tank assets to the directions of the main strikes. When German tanks broke through, they fell under flanking attacks from Soviet artillery. At a critical moment of the battle, when the enemy nevertheless managed to penetrate the defenses, Chernyakhovsky personally led a counterattack by a reserve tank regiment. This strike caught the Germans by surprise and forced them to retreat with heavy losses. The army commander was in the thick of the battle, inspiring the soldiers by his example. During the first 3 days of fighting, the Germans advanced only 8 to 10 kilometers, losing dozens of tanks and hundreds of soldiers. The pace of the offensive was several times lower than planned. By July 8th, it became clear that Operation Citadel was faltering. On July 12th, Soviet troops launched a counter-offensive. For the 60th Army, a new stage of the Battle of Kursk began, the pursuit of the retreating enemy. Here, Chernyakhovsky's offensive talent was fully revealed. He organized the pursuit in such a way as not to allow the Germans to consolidate their positions on intermediate lines. The Army's advanced detachments, including tanks, motorized infantry, and artillery, penetrated deep into enemy positions, cutting off retreat routes and creating panic in the rear. The main forces methodically advanced, destroying encircled groups. This tactic allowed for minimizing losses and maximally exhausting the enemy's forces. Chernyakhovsky constantly demanded initiative and courage in decision-making from division commanders. "Do not wait for orders from above where the situation requires immediate action," he said at meetings. This created an atmosphere of creative approach to carrying out combat missions. By the end of July, the 60th Army had liberated a significant territory and reached the approaches to Orel. For his successful actions in the Battle of Kursk, Ivan Danilovich was awarded the Order of Suvorov, First Class. But the main reward was the recognition of his military leadership talent by the High Command. The Battle of Kursk became a true school of strategic thinking for Chernyakhovsky. He demonstrated a rare combination of qualities: an analytical mind, the ability to anticipate enemy actions, decisiveness in critical situations, and personal courage. These qualities elevated him to the ranks of the most promising military leaders of the Red Army. Especially valuable was the experience of organizing the interaction of various branches of service. In the Battle of Kursk, Chernyakhovsky masterfully coordinated the actions of infantry, tanks, artillery, and aviation, achieving the maximum effect from their combined use. This experience served him well in subsequent operations, when the scale of military operations became even more grandiose. Autumn of 1943. Soviet troops, developing their success after the victory at the Battle of Kursk, were irresistibly advancing westward. For the 60th Army, under the command of Lieutenant General Ivan Chernyakhovsky, a new page in its combat path began: the liberation of Ukrainian land. For Ivan Danilovich, this was especially significant. After all, he was returning to his homeland, where his childhood and youth had passed. The front commander, Army General Nikolai Vatutin, set a difficult task for the 60th Army: to force the Dnieper north of Kiev and create a bridgehead for a further offensive. Chernyakhovsky understood the historical importance of the moment. He gathered his division commanders and delivered a brief but heartfelt speech. "Comrades, before us is a river that the enemy considers an insurmountable barrier. But there are no obstacles that Soviet soldiers cannot overcome. We are going to liberate the capital of Ukraine, the mother of Russian cities." Preparations for the Dnieper crossing were carried out meticulously. Chernyakhovsky personally went on reconnaissance, studied the riverbanks, and identified the most suitable places for crossing. he demanded the most detailed intelligence data on the enemy's defense system. The army commander understood that the success of the operation depended on surprise and speed of action. Chernyakhovsky's command style was evident in an unconventional decision. Instead of concentrating all forces in one sector, he organized the crossing simultaneously in several places. Advanced detachments, using makeshift means, rafts, boats, improvised floating craft, began the crossing on the night of September 26th. The Germans, not expecting such audacity, were unable to effectively counter it. The first to land on the western bank were battalions of the 241st Rifle Division under the command of Colonel Andriushchenko. Fierce battles for the bridgehead ensued. Chernyakhovsky, located at the command post on the eastern bank, constantly kept his finger on the pulse of events. When the situation in one of the sectors became complicated, he made a bold decision: to personally lead the crossing of reinforcements. Officers recalled how the army commander, under enemy fire, crossed the Dnieper in a simple fishing boat. Arriving at the bridgehead, he quickly assessed the situation and organized the repulsion of enemy counterattacks. His presence inspired the soldiers, many of whom were young, unseasoned men. "Don't be afraid of German tanks," Chernyakhovsky told the artillerymen. "You have anti-tank rifles, grenades, Molotov cocktails. The main thing is coolness and accurate fire." He personally demonstrated how to organize a firing system and where to position guns for maximum effectiveness. Over several days of fierce fighting, Chernyakhovsky's army captured and held several bridgeheads on the right bank of the Dnieper. This created favorable conditions for the subsequent offensive on Kiev. Front Commander Vatutin highly praised the actions of the 60th Army, particularly noting the personal courage and tactical skill of its commander. In early November, the Kiev offensive operation began. The 60th Army struck from the north, outflanking Kiev. Chernyakhovsky developed a bold plan. Instead of a frontal assault on well-fortified enemy positions, to conduct a deep flanking maneuver. Tank and mechanized units were to break through to the rear of the German Kiev grouping, cutting off their escape routes. On November 6, 1943, Kiev was liberated. The contribution of Chernyakhovsky's army to this victory was enormous. For his skillful leadership of the troops, Ivan Danilovich was promoted to the rank of Colonel General. At 37, he became one of the youngest military leaders of such rank in the history of the Red Army. The phenomenon of Ivan Chernyakhovsky's rapid ascent through the military hierarchy is striking even against the backdrop of accelerated wartime careers. What allowed a simple guy from a Ukrainian village to reach the heights of command in just 3.5 years of war? Many asked this question, observing the lightning-fast promotion of the young general. Chernyakhovsky's first key to success was his outstanding intellect. He possessed an analytical mind, the ability to quickly grasp the essence of the most complex military tasks and find unconventional solutions. The army commander amazed staff officers with his phenomenal memory. He remembered the location of every division, the number of tanks and guns, and the terrain features along the entire front. The second crucial factor was his education. Chernyakhovsky never stopped learning. Even during intense days of battle, he found time to study military theoretical works and analyze past operations. His adjutants recalled how the commander would stay up late into the night over maps and books, making notes, comparing, and reflecting. Chernyakhovsky's extraordinary work capacity distinguished him from other military leaders. He could work for days, maintaining clarity of thought and firmness of decisions. Ivan Danilovich would say when urged to take a break. This selflessness earned the respect of his subordinates and created a special atmosphere in the army headquarters, where everyone strived to live up to their commander. Chernyakhovsky's courage in decision-making was especially valued during wartime. He was not afraid to take responsibility for unconventional maneuvers and risky operations. At the same time, the risk was always calculated, based on a thorough analysis of the situation. There are no insoluble problems, only a lack of resolve, the general liked to repeat. The Stavka of the Supreme High Command closely followed the young army commander's successes. After the brilliantly conducted Kiev operation, Chernyakhovsky was summoned to Moscow. He had a personal meeting with Stalin. The Supreme Commander-in-Chief was impressed by the clarity of the reports, the depth of analysis, and the boldness of the 37-year-old general's proposals. "How do you assess the prospects for an offensive in the Belarusian direction?" Stalin asked. Chernyakhovsky, without hesitation, unfolded his vision for the future operation, pointing out the directions of the main thrusts, the anticipated lines, and the timelines on the map. His plan differed from the General Staff's proposals in its greater resolve and depth of conception. This meeting became a turning point in Ivan Danilovich's fate. Stalin, who valued strategic thinking and decisiveness, saw in the young general the potential of a front commander. In April 1944, Chernyakhovsky was promoted to the rank of Army General and appointed commander of the 3rd Belarusian Front. Thus, at 37, Ivan Chernyakhovsky became the youngest front commander in the history of the Great Patriotic War. This appointment surprised many. He had to bypass dozens of more experienced and older military leaders. However, the results of subsequent operations confirmed the correctness of this decision. Operation Bagration became one of the largest strategic offensive operations of the Great Patriotic War. For Ivan Chernyakhovsky, who assumed command of the 3rd Belarusian Front in April 1944, this was his first operation as front commander. He had to prove that the high trust placed in him by the Stavka was justified. Preparation for the operation began long before its start. Chernyakhovsky personally toured positions, met with unit commanders, and studied the enemy's defenses. His command post was not in the rear, but in close proximity to the front line. The Army general believed that this was the only way to feel the pulse of the front, to see the real picture and not its reflection in staff documents. Ivan Danilovich paid special attention to intelligence. By his order, special groups were created that penetrated deep into enemy territory, captured prisoners for interrogation, and recorded the location of firing points. The data was carefully analyzed and plotted on maps. By the start of the operation, Chernyakhovsky had a detailed picture of the German defenses throughout their depth. A crucial element of preparation was ensuring secrecy. Chernyakhovsky understood that success depended on the suddenness of the strike. An entire system of camouflage measures was developed. Troops moved only at night, radio communication was minimized, and false groupings and command posts were created. The enemy was to remain unaware of the direction of the main thrust. On June 23, 1944, Operation Bagration began. After a powerful artillery barrage, the troops of the 3rd Belarusian Front went on the offensive. The strike was so swift and unexpected that the German defenses were literally crushed. By the end of the first day, Chernyakhovsky's units had advanced up to 12 kilometers deep. Ivan Danilovich remained at the command post, but constantly visited key sectors of the front. He personally adjusted the actions of the units and resolved emerging problems. Officers recalled how the commander appeared where critical situations arose, and his presence changed the course of the battle. Chernyakhovsky's military talent was particularly evident during the encirclement of the enemy's Vitebsk grouping. He masterfully organized interaction between the armies of his front and the neighboring 1st Baltic Front under the command of General Bagramyan. As a result, 5 German divisions, totaling over 35,000 men, were caught in the cauldron. Chernyakhovsky did not waste time on a prolonged siege of the encircled grouping. He allocated a portion of his forces for its destruction, while the main forces continued the offensive towards Minsk. This decision allowed him to maintain the tempo of the operation and prevent the enemy from organizing defenses on intermediate lines. The offensive developed rapidly. Tank units, supported by aviation, penetrated deep into enemy territory, cutting off escape routes and creating panic. The infantry methodically cleared settlements. Artillery suppressed pockets of resistance. Chernyakhovsky skillfully coordinated the actions of all branches of service, achieving maximum effect. On July 3, 1944, the troops of the 3rd Belarusian Front, in cooperation with the 1st Belarusian Front, liberated Minsk. A large enemy grouping, about 100,000 men, was encircled in the city and its environs. This operation would later be called the Minsk Cauldron. The success of Operation Bagration surpassed the most optimistic forecasts. In 2 weeks, the troops under Chernyakhovsky's command advanced 250 kilometers, liberated most of Belarus, and reached the borders of Lithuania. Dozens of German divisions were routed, thousands of prisoners were captured, and an enormous amount of military equipment was seized. In this operation, Chernyakhovsky's military style was fully revealed. He was distinguished by the boldness of his conception, thoroughness of preparation, and flexibility in troop management. Ivan Danilovich knew how to combine decisiveness with calculation, daring with caution. He never threw troops into battle without a thorough analysis of the situation, but he also never missed opportunities to develop success. Ivan Chernyakhovsky's military leadership style was unique and recognizable, like a master's signature on a masterpiece. His command style was not forged in the quiet of military academies, but in the crucible of battles, where every decision was tested by blood and victories. What distinguished the youngest front commander from other military leaders? First and foremost, his personal participation in reconnaissance. Chernyakhovsky did not subscribe to a desk-bound style of leadership. A map cannot replace the terrain. He loved to repeat. Even after becoming a front commander, Ivan Danilovich regularly visited the front lines, personally studying positions, terrain, and local features. Officers recalled how the army general, disregarding danger, could observe the enemy for hours, making notes in his notebook. This habit often caused anxiety among his subordinates and senior commanders. Marshal Vasilevsky once remarked to Chernyakhovsky, "Comrade Chernyakhovsky, a front commander should not take such risks. It will be difficult to replace you." To which he received a characteristic reply, "Comrade Marshal, one cannot demand from division and regimental commanders what one does not do oneself." The second distinguishing feature of Chernyakhovsky's style was his particular system of working with the staff. Unlike many commanders who created distance between themselves and staff officers, Ivan Danilovich cultivated an atmosphere of creative exploration. He encouraged initiative, demanding from his subordinates not formal execution of orders, but an understanding of the operation's intent. At meetings, Chernyakhovsky often addressed junior officers. "And what do you think about this matter?" This approach fostered healthy discussion, allowing the problem to be viewed from different angles. However, the final word always rested with the commander. Once a decision was made, he demanded its impeccable execution. Chernyakhovsky paid special attention to the technical support of the troops. His tank past and engineering education played a role. He personally checked the condition of equipment, spoke with mechanics, and inquired about repair problems and spare parts supply. Without serviceable equipment, a modern army is not an army, the general would say. At Chernyakhovsky's initiative, an effective system of field repair was established in the troops of the 3rd Belarusian Front. Repair brigades followed directly behind advancing units, restoring damaged equipment right on the battlefield. This allowed tanks and self-propelled guns to be quickly returned to service, which was especially important during an offensive. Chernyakhovsky's relationships with his subordinates were built on a combination of demandingness and respect. He never allowed himself to humiliate the dignity of officers, nor did he arrange public reprimands. Even the most severe reprimands were given in private. At the same time, the general was merciless towards disciplinary violators and idlers. A characteristic incident occurred during the East Prussian operation. One of the regimental commanders failed to complete a combat mission, citing bad weather. Chernyakhovsky arrived at the regiment, silently listened to the explanations, then took binoculars and long observed the enemy's positions. He finally said, "The next day the regiment successfully attacked and occupied the designated line." After this, Chernyakhovsky personally presented the lieutenant colonel with the Order of the Red Banner, noting his skillful actions during the assault. This episode characterizes another trait of Ivan Danilovich's command style. He knew how to acknowledge the merits of those who corrected their mistakes. In his relations with senior commanders, Chernyakhovsky showed respect, but maintained independence of judgment. He was never afraid to defend his point of view if he was confident in its correctness. At the same time, he did so tactfully, with arguments, without resorting to personal attacks. In early 1945, the troops of the Third Belarusian Front, under the command of Ivan Chernyakhovsky, approached the borders of East Prussia, a historical German territory considered an impregnable fortress. Here, on their native land, the Germans fought with particular ferocity, turning every settlement into a defensive stronghold. For Chernyakhovsky, the impending operation was not just a military task. It was an invasion of the enemy's lair, a blow to the very heart of German militarism. Preparation for the East Prussian operation began long before its start. Chernyakhovsky understood. It was not just defensive lines that had to be breached, but an entire system of fortifications that had been created over decades. Numerous pillboxes, bunkers, anti-tank ditches, minefields. All of this required a special approach. East Prussia is not Belarus or Lithuania, Ivan Danilovich said at a meeting of army commanders. Here, every meter of land is prepared for defense. We are facing not just a military operation, but a real assault on a fortress. Chernyakhovsky personally toured all sections of the future offensive. His commander's all-terrain vehicle could be seen in the most dangerous areas. The army general spent hours observing the enemy, studying the terrain, and making notes in his notepad. These observations formed the basis of the breakthrough plan. A distinctive feature of Chernyakhovsky's plan was the concentration of a huge mass of artillery on narrow breakthrough sectors. By his order, artillery destruction groups were created, which were literally to wipe German fortifications off the face of the earth. The artillery density reached 300 barrels per kilometer of front, an unprecedented concentration of firepower. Another novelty was the creation of assault groups. They included sappers, flamethrower operators, artillerymen, and infantrymen. Each group was prepared to capture a specific object, a pillbox, a building, a height. Chernyakhovsky personally supervised the training of these groups, delving into all the details of the upcoming assault. On January 13, 1945, the thunder of artillery preparation broke out. Thousands of guns unleashed fire on German positions. After a 3-hour artillery barrage, infantry and tanks went on the attack. The East Prussian operation began. The first days of the offensive showed that the enemy was offering fanatical resistance. Every settlement had to be taken by storm. The Germans, realizing that there was nowhere to retreat, fought to the last bullet. Chernyakhovsky was constantly at the command post, coordinating the actions of the armies. When the situation became critical, he would go to threatened areas. Particularly heavy fighting unfolded for the city of Insterburg, an important transport hub. The Germans had turned it into a real fortress, saturated with anti-tank artillery. The first attacks were unsuccessful. Chernyakhovsky arrived at the advancing units, personally studied the defense system, and proposed an unexpected solution: a night assault using searchlights to blind the enemy. This tactical maneuver, previously not used in this direction, caught the Germans by surprise. Insterburg was taken, opening the way to Königsberg, the main citadel of East Prussia. The advance of the 3rd Belarusian Front troops caused panic among the German population. Goebbels' propaganda had for years spoken of the atrocities of the Bolsheviks. And now these fears materialized in the mass flight of civilians. Columns of refugees clogged the roads, hindering the maneuver of German troops. Chernyakhovsky issued the strictest order: treat the civilian population humanely. We are fighting not with women and children, but with fascism. He understood the political significance of this issue. The Soviet Union was entering German territory not as an avenger, but as a liberator of Europe from Nazism. By the end of January, the front's troops reached the approaches to Königsberg. Many more heavy battles lay ahead, but the main task, breaking through the border fortifications, had been accomplished. The German East Prussian grouping was cut into pieces and lost its ability to offer organized resistance. In these battles, Chernyakhovsky's special gift was manifested: the ability to find non-standard solutions in the most difficult situations. When traditional methods failed, he proposed unexpected tactical moves that made the enemy lose balance. February 18, 1945. A frosty morning. The roads of East Prussia, softened by the thaw and then once again gripped by the night frost, were covered with a treacherous crust of ice. The commander of the 3rd Belarusian Front, Army General Ivan Chernyakhovsky, set out for the area of the town of Melsak, modern Pieniężno, to personally assess the situation on one of the difficult sectors of the offensive. His Willys, accompanied by guards, was moving along the road when a German artillery shell exploded nearby. A fatal fragment pierced the side of the vehicle and mortally wounded the commander. Adjutants immediately rushed Chernyakhovsky to the nearest field hospital, but they could not save him. At 14 hours, 10 minutes, the heart of the youngest front commander stopped. He was only 39 years old. News of Chernyakhovsky's death spread lightning fast across the front. Soldiers and officers refused to believe what had happened. How could it be? Their commander, who just yesterday had spoken at a meeting full of energy and plans, was dead today? Many wept, unashamed of their tears. General Galitsky, commander of one of the front's armies, later recalled, "It felt like something inside had broken. We lost not just a talented commander, we lost a man who was leading us to victory, in whom we believed boundlessly." There are several versions of Chernyakhovsky's death. According to the official version, his vehicle came under accidental artillery fire. However, some researchers put forward other assumptions. According to one of them, the commander's car might have hit a mine planted by German saboteurs. According to another, the shot could have been aimed, fired by a specially trained enemy artillery observer. There are also more conspiratorial versions, linking Chernyakhovsky's death to internal intrigues within the top military leadership. However, no documentary evidence for this has been found. Most historians lean towards the idea that the commander's death was a tragic accident, one of those with which war is so rich. News of Chernyakhovsky's death reached Moscow on the same day. Stalin, upon receiving the report, remained silent for a long time, then said, by his order, a special decree was issued stating, the general's body was transported to Moscow. On February 21, 1945, a solemn funeral took place. The urn with Ivan Danilovich's ashes was buried on Red Square in the Kremlin wall. This was the highest honor a Soviet military leader could be accorded. At the front, Marshal of the Soviet Union Alexander Vasilevsky took command. The operation continued without interruption, just as Chernyakhovsky himself would have wanted. The troops of the Third Belarusian Front, as if driven by a desire for revenge for their commander, struck the enemy with renewed force. In memory of the commander, the city of Insterburg, liberated by the troops under his command, was renamed Chernyakhovsk. It bears this name to this day. Monuments to the general were erected in many cities of the Soviet Union. Chernyakhovsky's death, just a few months before the end of the war, seemed especially unjust. The man who had led the army through the most difficult trials did not live to see the triumphant completion of his path. As the poet Konstantin Simonov wrote, "He fell in battle, almost at the threshold of that highest glory that could crown his brow at the end of the journey, on the day of the righteous war's end." The war continued. East Prussia was completely liberated. Königsberg fell, the citadel of German militarism. Finally, on May 9, 1945, the salvos of the victory salute thundered. But among those who led the country to this victory, Ivan Chernyakhovsky was no longer there, the youngest front commander whose bright star faded so early in the military firmament. General Chernyakhovsky's legacy extends far beyond his battlefield victories. His contribution to the development of military art holds particular value for military science. Chernyakhovsky was not merely an executor of Stavka directives, he was an innovator whose tactical and strategic decisions were ahead of their time. One of the main innovations introduced by Chernyakhovsky was the principle of deep echeloning of tank formations. Unlike the traditional practice of using tanks as a direct infantry support tool, he viewed armored vehicles as an independent strike force. In this approach, tank units were positioned not in a single line, but in several echelons, which allowed for increasing the strike power and developing success in breached sectors. Chernyakhovsky told his subordinates. He demanded that tankers not simply move forward, destroying everything in their path, but act selectively, choosing key targets and bypassing secondary pockets of resistance. Another important element of Chernyakhovsky's military art was the masterful use of artillery. He developed the concept of artillery destruction groups, which concentrated fire on narrow sectors of the front, literally wiping enemy fortifications off the face of the earth. At the same time, artillery preparation was not an end in itself. It was carefully coordinated with the actions of infantry and tanks. A pioneering approach was Chernyakhovsky's creation of mobile anti-tank reserves. These mobile groups, which included anti-tank artillery, tank destroyers, and sappers, could be quickly redeployed to threatened directions. Such tactics allowed for saving forces and effectively countering enemy tank breakthroughs. Particular attention should be paid to the system of inter-branch cooperation developed by Chernyakhovsky. Unlike many commanders who viewed aviation, artillery, tanks, and infantry as separate tools, Ivan Danilovich saw them as elements of a single mechanism. In exercises and combat operations, he achieved synchronization of actions of all units, which greatly amplified the strike power. Military theorists note another feature of Chernyakhovsky's command style: his attention to logistical support. Modern war is a war of engines and mechanisms, which means it is a war of supply and repair, the general emphasized. At his initiative, an effective system of field repair shops was created, which followed directly behind the advancing units. After the war, military specialists from various countries studied the operations conducted by Chernyakhovsky. His actions in East Prussia, where powerful fortified areas had to be overcome, aroused particular interest. The methods of breaking through defenses developed by Chernyakhovsky became part of military academy textbooks. Professor of the General Staff Military Academy, Lieutenant General Pavlovsky, wrote in his research, Chernyakhovsky possessed a rare gift of foresight. His operations were distinguished not only by thorough preparation, but also by flexibility of execution. He was able to quickly react to changes in the situation, adjust plans on the fly, which is the highest level of military art. American military historian David Glantz, analyzing the actions of the Third Belarusian Front, noted, Chernyakhovsky demonstrated a masterful command of the art of maneuver warfare. His ability to concentrate forces in decisive directions while simultaneously pinning down the enemy in secondary sectors testifies to a deep understanding of the principles of modern combat. An important part of Chernyakhovsky's legacy was his methods of working with officer personnel. He created a special atmosphere at the front headquarters that encouraged initiative and a creative approach to solving combat tasks. Many officers who passed through Chernyakhovsky's school later became prominent military leaders and theorists of military affairs. The name of Ivan Chernyakhovsky has become a symbol of valor and military genius. The memory of the youngest front commander is immortalized in the names of cities and streets across the country. The city of Insterburg in East Prussia, liberated by troops under his command, has borne the name Chernyakovsk since 1946. Dozens of streets in various cities of Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus are named after the commander. Monuments hold a special place in perpetuating his memory. The first monument to Chernyakhovsky was erected in Vilnius back in 1950, at the very spot where the general was initially buried. The majestic monument, a work by sculptor Tomsky, became one of the landmarks of the Lithuanian capital. However, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, it was dismantled and transferred to Russia. This monument is now installed in Voronezh, a city liberated by troops under Chernyakhovsky's command. Significant monuments to the commander are installed in Moscow, Uman, and Chernyakovsk. In his native village of Oksanino, a memorial museum has been established, carefully preserving the general's personal belongings, photographs, and documents. Thousands of people visited annually, wishing to pay tribute to their outstanding countryman. The image of Ivan Chernyakhovsky is reflected in literature and cinema. Writers and poets dedicated their works to him. Konstantin Simonov, who knew the general personally, wrote a heartfelt poem, General, which includes these lines. Even in 41 near Yelnya, we knew him young. In 45, we didn't live to see him gray. Writer Vladimir Karpov, in his novel The Commander, created a vivid literary portrait of Chernyakhovsky, based on contemporaries' memoirs and archival documents. Documentary filmmakers made several films about the general's life path. In feature films about the Great Patriotic War, Chernyakhovsky's image, though episodically, appears as a symbol of a new generation of Soviet military leaders. In scholarly research by historians from various countries, Chernyakhovsky's activities receive high praise. Russian military historians note his contribution to the development of tank troop tactics and the art of deep operation. Western researchers recognize the commander's strategic talent, especially evident in Operation Bagration and the East Prussian offensive. German historian Paul Karel, in his book, wrote, "In modern Russia, Chernyakhovsky's figure holds an important place in the patriotic education of youth. His biography is a vivid example of how talent, hard work, and determination can lead to the highest achievements even under the most difficult conditions." The life story of a simple Ukrainian boy who became an outstanding commander inspires new generations. military educational institutions study operations conducted under Chernyakhovsky's leadership as models of military art. His methods of troop management and his ability to find unconventional solutions in critical situations are valuable for modern commanders as well. To preserve historical memory, meetings of veterans who fought under Chernyakhovsky's command are of great importance. Their vivid recollections create a volumetric, multifaceted image of the commander, not only as a military genius, but also as a man who cared for his soldiers and knew how to approach each one. In the 21st century, when attempts are made to revise the outcomes of World War II, it is especially important to preserve the memory of people like Ivan Chernyakhovsky. His short but bright life is part of the great history of our country, a symbol of courage, talent, and devotion to the motherland.